Have you ever been told you weren't good enough? That you didn't belong somewhere? That your dreams were too big for someone like you? I still remember the day my high school counselor looked me straight in the eyes and said, "College isn't for kids like you." Stay with me until the end to see their faces when I opened my diploma right in front of them, and how this moment changed everything. Welcome to Plot Twist Life, where we share stories that remind you that your life can change in unexpected ways. Before we dive into today's story, make sure to subscribe to our channel so you never miss another life-changing moment that could inspire your own journey. Now let me tell you how I went from being the kid who wasn't college material to standing on a stage with a diploma in my hands. I grew up in Westside Heights, a neighborhood where police sirens were our lullabies and gunshots sometimes interrupted dinner. My building was one of those brick apartments with metal gates on the windows up to the third floor. The elevators rarely worked, so we'd climb 6 flights of stairs to reach our 2-bedroom apartment where I lived with my mom, grandmother, and 2 younger sisters. My dad wasn't in the picture. He left when I was 4. My memories of him are fragments, a deep laugh, the smell of motor oil, and then nothing. Mom worked 2 jobs, days at the hospital cafeteria and evenings cleaning offices downtown. She'd leave before dawn and return long after we were supposed to be asleep, though we'd often wait up just to see her face. School was never my enemy, but it wasn't exactly my friend either. I was quiet, the kind of student teachers forget about. Not disruptive enough to be a problem, not brilliant enough to be a star. Just there, occupying space, getting by with C's and occasional B's when a subject happened to click. By 10th grade, I had settled into the comfortable mediocrity that was expected of me. Nobody in my family had gone to college. Mom had finished high school before having me at 19. Grandma had made it to 8th grade before going to work in a factory. The pattern was clear. Education was something you endured until you could work, not something you pursued. Then Ms. Parker happened. She was new, a young English teacher with bright eyes and an energy that seemed out of place in our rundown school. She assigned us to read The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And something in that story about following your personal legend struck me in a way nothing had before. I wrote my essay on the book with actual care, staying up late at our kitchen table while Mom soaked her feet in a basin of warm water after her shift. When Ms. Parker handed it back with an A and a note saying, "You have a voice that deserves to be heard," I felt something shift inside me. For weeks after, I found myself volunteering answers in class, raising my hand, engaging. It was like a muscle I hadn't used before. This feeling of having thoughts that mattered. My grades in English improved, then in history, then even in the sciences that had always intimidated me. By junior year, I had managed to pull my GPA up to a solid B average. Not spectacular, but a significant improvement. I even joined the debate club at Ms. Parker's suggestion, discovering I had a talent for constructing arguments and thinking on my feet. But reality has a way of reasserting itself. In spring of junior year, we had our college counseling sessions. When I sat down across from Mr. Winters, our guidance counselor, his eyes barely lifted from my file. "So, Marcus," he said, scanning my transcript, "let's talk about realistic options after graduation." I had spent the previous night researching colleges online at the public library. I had a list of schools with strong communications programs, thinking perhaps I could channel my newfound voice into journalism or media. I was thinking maybe State University, I offered. Their communications program. Mr. Winters' laugh cut me off. Not a full laugh, more of a dismissive chuckle, the kind adults use when children say something naively ambitious. "Marcus," he said, leaning forward, his voice dropping into what I'm sure he thought was sympathetic frankness. "I've been doing this job for 22 years. I know potential when I see it, and I know limitations too. College isn't for kids like you." The words hit like a physical blow. "Kids like me?" I repeated. "From your background, with your grades. You've improved, sure, but college requires a foundation you simply don't have. The statistics don't lie. Kids from West Side rarely make it through a semester, let alone to graduation. It's not a judgment, it's just reality." He slid a brochure across the desk. "Trade schools, certification programs. Practical options," he called them. "These are paths where you can succeed," he continued, "where you won't waste time and money chasing something that isn't meant for you." I took the brochure, nodded numbly, and left his office. In the hallway, I ran into Ms. Parker. "How did your counseling go?" she asked, her smile fading as she read my face. I told her what Mr. Winters had said, about kids like me, about college not being my path, about knowing my limitations. Ms. Parker's expression hardened in a way I'd never seen before. "Come with me," she said, and marched me back toward Mr. Winters' office. She knocked once and entered without waiting for a response. What followed was the most polite evisceration I've ever witnessed. She never raised her voice, never used a single inappropriate word. But the intensity with which she defended my potential left Mr. Winters stammering. She pulled out essays I'd written, projects I'd completed, growth I'd shown. "This student," she said, pointing at me but staring at him, "has overcome more obstacles before breakfast than some of your college material students will face in a lifetime. If anyone has demonstrated the resilience and determination that college demands, it's Marcus." Mr. Winters remained unconvinced, but agreed to reconsider my options. After we left, Ms. Parker turned to me in the hallway. "His opinion doesn't define you," she said firmly. "But you need to understand something, Marcus. He's not entirely wrong about the statistics. It will be harder for you. You will have to work twice as hard for half the recognition. But harder doesn't mean impossible." That conversation changed everything. Not because it instantly made me believe in myself. It didn't. But it made me realize something critical. There was a choice here. I could accept the narrative that had been written for me, the one about kids from West Side Heights who follow predictable paths into predictable struggles, or I could write my own story. The next day, I went to the library and researched scholarships, grants, financial aid. I learned about entrance requirements, application essays, recommendation letters. I studied for the SAT using borrowed prep books, taking practice tests during lunch breaks and after school. My first practice score was abysmal. So was my second, and my third. But by the fifth, I was seeing improvement. Small, incremental progress that wouldn't impress anyone except me. And me, Ms. Parker, who checked in regularly, offering guidance and occasionally hard truths when my focus slipped. Senior year arrived, and with it, college applications. I applied to 8 schools, 3 reach schools that were probably beyond my realistic chances, 3 target schools that seemed possible with my improved grades and test scores, and 2 safety schools that I felt confident would accept me. The rejections came first. One after another, my reach schools sent polite letters explaining that while my application was competitive, they had many qualified applicants. Each rejection stung less than Mr. Winters' words had, but they stung nonetheless. Then came 2 acceptances from my safety schools. Relief, but not celebration. I had proven I could get into college, but not the ones I truly wanted. As weeks passed, I had resigned myself to attending one of these safety schools when an email notification changed everything. State University, my original goal, one of my target schools, had accepted me. Not only accepted me, but offered a partial scholarship based on my essay and demonstrated perseverance. The day I received that acceptance, I printed it out and walked straight to Mr. Winters' office. I didn't say a word, just handed him the letter and watched as he read it, his expression unchanging except for a slight tightening around his eyes. "Congratulations," he said finally, handing it back. "I hope you prove me wrong." His tone made it clear he didn't think I would, that I'd become another statistic, accepted but unable to complete my degree, another West Side kid who reached too far. Those words followed me to State University that fall. They echoed in my mind during orientation week as I looked around at my fellow freshmen, noticing the differences in how they carried themselves, how they spoke, the casual confidence that came from always believing you belonged. My first semester was brutal. The academic rigor was unlike anything I'd experienced. Professors assigned readings that took me hours to get through. Papers required research methods I'd never been taught. Discussions moved at a pace that left me struggling to formulate thoughts before the topic had already shifted. I failed my first major paper in English composition, the very subject where I thought I'd excel. The professor's comments were direct. "Your ideas have potential, but your execution lacks the basic academic foundation this course assumes." I considered quitting, packing up my few belongings and heading back to West Side, back to the narrative that had been written for me, back to being the kid who wasn't college material. Mr. Winter's knowing smile haunted my thoughts. Instead, I went to the professor's office hours. I showed her my high school essays, explained my background, and asked a simple question. What am I missing, and how do I learn it? She seemed surprised by my directness, maybe even impressed by it. She pointed me toward the university's academic support center, recommended specific books on composition, and offered to review drafts of my work before submission if I could get them to her early enough. That became my pattern. I identified gaps in my knowledge and systematically worked to fill them. I practically lived in the library and the writing center. I formed study groups with classmates who had strengths where I had weaknesses. I worked weekends when others partied, woke before dawn to study when my mind was freshest. The improvement wasn't immediate or linear. I still failed assignments. I still had moments of crushing doubt. But by the end of my freshman year, I had maintained a B- average, not spectacular, but enough to keep my scholarship and, more importantly, to keep going. Sophomore year brought new challenges, but also growing confidence. I declared communications as my major, with a minor in sociology. I joined the campus newspaper, starting with small assignments that grew as editors recognized my work ethic and unique perspective. One professor, Dr. Ramirez, became a particular mentor. Like me, he had come from a neighborhood where college wasn't the expected path. He recognized in me the same hunger that had driven him, not just to succeed, but to defy expectations. The chip on your shoulder, he called it once, is both your greatest strength and your greatest vulnerability. It drives you, but it can also blind you. He taught me to channel that energy productively, to use my background not as a chip, but as a lens, a perspective that allowed me to see and articulate things others might miss. Under his guidance, I developed a voice that was authentically mine, one that didn't try to mimic what I thought academic writing should sound like. Junior year, I landed an internship at the city newspaper, a competitive position usually reserved for seniors. The editor who selected me said later that my writing sample stood out because it approached familiar topics from unfamiliar angles. I sent the acceptance letter to Ms. Parker, who had continued to check in with me via email. Her reply was simple. "I'm proud, but not surprised. Keep going." By senior year, I had risen to become managing editor of the campus newspaper. My GPA had climbed to a solid 3.6. I had secured another internship for the summer after graduation at a national media outlet. The narrative was changing. I was changing it, word by word, assignment by assignment, day by day. As graduation approached, I sent invitations to the people who mattered. Mom, who had taken on extra shifts to help with expenses not covered by my scholarship. Grandma, who had told stories of her own unfulfilled dreams of education. My sisters, who now had a different model of what was possible. Ms. Parker, who had seen potential when others saw limitations. And Mr. Winters. I debated this one, drafted and deleted the email several times before finally sending it. Not out of malice or a desire to prove him wrong, though that element existed, but because his words, painful as they were, had been part of my journey. They had helped forge my determination. In a strange way, I owed him a thank you. I didn't expect him to come. But the day before graduation, I received an email. "I'll be there," was all it said. Graduation day dawned clear and bright, the kind of perfect spring day that seems designed for new beginnings. I sat among my classmates in my cap and gown, scanning the crowd until I spotted them, my family clustered together, Ms. Parker beside them, and several rows back, Mr. Winters, looking uncomfortable but present. When they called my name, Marcus Johnson, Bachelor of Arts in Communications, cum laude, I crossed that stage with 17 years of doubts, struggles, and victories compressed into each step. The university president handed me my diploma, shook my hand, and whispered the customary, "Congratulations." But it wasn't until I stepped off the stage, diploma in hand, that the moment I had imagined for 4 years finally arrived. I walked directly to where my family sat, hugged each of them, tears flowing freely. Then I turned to Mr. Winters, who had made his way down to the front. I didn't speak. I simply unrolled my diploma and held it before him. Our eyes met over the embossed paper, and something passed between us. Acknowledgement, respect, perhaps even an apology. He extended his hand. "You proved me wrong," he said, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "I've never been happier to be wrong in my life." It would be poetic to say this was a perfect moment of vindication, that all the hurt his words had caused was instantly healed. Life is rarely so neat, but it was something more valuable, a moment of human connection, of growth on both sides of an old wound. Ms. Parker joined us, placing one hand on my shoulder and extending the other to Mr. Winters. "This is why we do what we do," she said to him, "to be proven wrong in the best possible ways." Later, at the small celebration my mother had organized at our apartment, Mr. Winters arrived with an envelope. Inside was a card signed by the entire guidance department and a job offer to return to my old high school as a part-time college success coach while I pursued my master's degree. "We need someone who understands both worlds," he explained. "Someone who can speak honestly about the challenges, but refuses to accept limitations." I accepted that position, deferring my internship with the blessing of the editor who had hired me. For the next 2 years, as I worked on my master's in education policy, I spent 3 days a week at my old high school, working with students who reminded me so much of myself. I shared my story openly, the doubts, the failures, the moments when quitting seemed like the only sensible option. I didn't sugarcoat the difficulties of being the first in your family to attend college, of navigating institutions not designed with you in mind, of feeling perpetually like an outsider. But I also shared the other side, the profound sense of accomplishment, the doors that education opens, the perspective it provides, the voice it helps you find and amplify. The first year was challenging. Old habits and narratives don't change overnight. Many students listened politely, but remained skeptical. Some were openly resistant, seeing college as a betrayal of their roots or an impossible dream not worth pursuing. But slowly, things began to change. More students signed up for SAT prep sessions. Application numbers increased. Acceptance letters began arriving. My second year, we had 27 seniors accepted to 4-year colleges, a record for West Side Heights. 15 more were headed to community colleges with transfer plans. Nearly all had secured some form of financial aid. Mr. Winters, nearing retirement, became an unexpected ally. He had seen enough to recognize that his old approach had been fundamentally flawed, based more on statistics than on individual potential. Together, we revamped the guidance department's approach to college counseling, focusing on possibility rather than probability. The work was rewarding but also intensely personal. Each student's success felt like a validation of my own journey. Each setback reopened old wounds. I found myself experiencing their college journeys vicariously, riding the emotional highs and lows alongside them. When the first group of students I had counseled approached their college graduations, I made a point of attending as many ceremonies as I could. I watched them cross stages just as I had, saw the same mix of pride, relief, and disbelief on their faces. After one such ceremony, a young woman named Tasha approached me, diploma in hand. She had been one of my most challenging students, brilliant but defensive, convinced the system was rigged against her. "I almost quit sophomore year," she confessed. "I had failed 2 classes and was sure I didn't belong there." Then I remembered what you told us about your first semester, about asking that professor what you were missing and how to learn it. So I did the same thing, even though it terrified me. She unrolled her diploma, biochemistry with honors, and held it up, just as I had once held mine. "I wanted you to see this," she said, "because without you, it wouldn't exist." That moment brought everything full circle. The words that had once been used to limit me, "College isn't for kids like you," had been transformed into a question: why isn't college for kids like you? And that question had led to action, to change, to dozens of diplomas that might otherwise never have existed. 10 years have passed since my own graduation. I completed my master's degree and went on to earn a PhD in education policy. Today, I run a nonprofit that works with schools in underserved communities to build college pathways. We've helped over 3,000 students access higher education who might otherwise have been written off as not college material. Mr. Winters retired but serves on our board of advisors. Ms. Parker still teaches, but also trains other teachers on recognizing and nurturing potential in unlikely places. My mother finally fulfilled her own dream of education, earning an associate's degree in health services management. Both my sisters graduated college. The neighborhood hasn't transformed overnight. West Side Heights still faces challenges: poverty, crime, systemic barriers that won't disappear with a few success stories. But the narrative has shifted. College is no longer seen as an alien world reserved for others. It's a possibility, difficult but attainable. I keep my diploma framed in my office, not as a symbol of personal triumph, though that element exists, but as a reminder of the power of words, both to limit and to liberate. College isn't for kids like you nearly defined my path, but in the end, it didn't get to have the final say. I did. We all do. Every time I work with a student who's been told, explicitly or implicitly, what they can't do or who they can't become, I think about that moment on the graduation stage, about unrolling that diploma and watching a flawed but necessary assumption crumble. Because here's what I've learned. When someone tells you that you don't belong somewhere, it says more about the limitations of their imagination than about your potential. The most powerful response isn't anger or argument, it's achievement. It's standing in the very place they said you couldn't reach, diploma in hand, authoring a new chapter, not just for yourself, but for everyone who comes after you. So if you're watching this, and someone has told you that your dreams are too big, that certain paths aren't for people like you, whatever that means, know this: they're wrong. Not because a success is easy or guaranteed, but because human potential can't be predicted or prescribed. It can only be discovered, nurtured, and unleashed. And sometimes, the greatest achievement isn't proving others wrong. It's proving yourself right. That's the story of how I went from being told college wasn't for kids like me to not only earning my diploma, but helping thousands of others do the same. Life has a way of creating the most beautiful plot twists when we refuse to accept the limitations others place on us. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to Plot Twist Life for more stories that will inspire you to rewrite your own narrative. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a video. And if you're facing your own obstacles right now, leave a comment below. This community is here to support you. Also, if you want to see more stories about educational journeys and overcoming academic barriers, check out the video pinned in the comments section below. Remember, your story isn't written in stone. It's written by your choices, your persistence, and your courage to defy expectations. I'll see you in the next video.